India loves to call itself the regional superpower of South Asia, but here's the uncomfortable truth. When you zoom in on the numbers, GDP per capita, industrial development, basic human development, India starts looking less like a leader and more like a loud, underperforming neighbor. Let's talk facts, not feelings. India has the largest nominal GDP in the region, that's true. As of 2024, it sits at around $3.70 to $4 trillion. But break that down across 1.4 billion people and the per capita GDP plummets to just over $2,500. That's shockingly low for a country that claims to be a global tech hub and space power. Meanwhile, tiny Sri Lanka, still recovering from a severe economic crisis, has a per capita GDP of over $4,000, which is far higher than India's. Even Bangladesh, which used to be mocked by Indian media for being poor and backward, now has a per capita GDP close to $2,800, edging ahead of India for several years before COVID slowed it down. Pakistan is around $1,600, weighed down by chronic political instability, debt, and security issues, but even then, India's lead isn't as dominant as it pretends. Because the matter of fact is that India is far more unequal than its neighbors. I'm sure you've seen the awful contrasting images and videos of Mumbai, where skyscrapers and mega-rich billionaire apartment complexes tower over the slums filled with litter and open-flowing sewage. So, yeah, India is the biggest economy in the region, but that's like being the tallest kid in kindergarten. When you're that big and still struggling to deliver toilets, clean air, and safe drinking water, it's not exactly brag-worthy, is it, netizens? Let's break it down by sectors. Agriculture. India still has nearly 45% of its workforce in agriculture, yet the sector only contributes about 15% to GDP. That means millions of people are stuck in low productivity jobs. Bangladesh, with only about 40% of its workforce in agriculture, has used textiles and agro-processing to transition people into more productive roles. Pakistan and Sri Lanka also face similar rural employment challenges, but India's size makes its inefficiencies more glaring. Manufacturing. India's manufacturing sector is frankly underwhelming. Despite the big slogans like Make in India, manufacturing contributes just 17% to India's GDP. Compare that to Bangladesh, where manufacturing is nearly 30% of GDP, largely thanks to its garment industry, which is the second largest exporter of textiles in the world after China. Yes, tiny Bangladesh, with fewer people, less land, fewer resources, and yet it outperforms India in turning factories into national income. Sri Lanka has focused more on high-value manufacturing like electronics, shipbuilding, and food processing. And Pakistan, while struggling a bit due to energy crises and poor infrastructure, still has a strong textile and cement sector. India, meanwhile, keeps trying to attract Apple and Tesla with tax breaks and PR campaigns, but it still can't fix its broken labor laws, clogged logistics networks, or energy bottlenecks. Most of its factories are low-tech, labor-intensive, and uncompetitive on the global stage. Services. This is the one area where India actually performs decently. The IT and business process outsourcing sector makes up over 50% of India's GDP. But here's the kicker. It employs less than 10% of the workforce. That means while a small elite class works for Google or Wipro, the vast majority are either unemployed, underemployed, or stuck in agriculture. And the worst thing? A large portion of that 10% are working in hot, cramped, noisy call centers that pay peanuts. Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are catching up here too. Dhaka has quietly become a hub for software development and remote freelancing. Sri Lanka's tourism and business services have historically brought in steady revenue until the pandemic and economic crisis knocked them down. Now let's talk about how India behaves in the region. India doesn't just want to be bigger. It wants to be in charge. It meddles in the politics of its neighbors while lecturing the world about sovereignty. Look at Nepal. India has blocked trade routes during political disputes, leading to fuel and medicine shortages. In Sri Lanka, India has tried to outbid China in port projects and even pressured Colombo over its foreign policy decisions. And don't forget Bangladesh. While Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has maintained warm ties with Delhi, many Bangladeshis feel India exploits their dependence. The Teesta water sharing agreement has been stalled for over a decade because of Indian state politics. Meanwhile, Indian politicians routinely make inflammatory comments about Bangladeshi migrants, treating them as pawns for votes. India treats Pakistan as a hostile rival, which, to be fair, is mutual. But even there, India has tried to isolate Pakistan diplomatically instead of engaging seriously. The result? Pakistan just turns to China for more support, and the region becomes even more divided. But Pakistan actually receives strong modern technology and good business deals from China. Well done, India, I guess. So instead of cooperation, India often defaults to domination. The irony? It doesn't even have the economic strength to back it up. Let's put this in perspective. Sri Lanka, nominal GDP tilde dollar, 80 billion, GDP per capita $4,000. Bangladesh, nominal GDP tilde dollar, 460 billion, GDP per capita $2,800. Pakistan, nominal GDP tilde dollar, 340 billion, GDP per capita $1,600. India, nominal GDP tilde dollar, 3.74 trillion, GDP per capita $2,500. In other words, Bangladesh is more productive per person than India. Sri Lanka is significantly wealthier on a per capita basis. Even Pakistan, despite political chaos and IMF bailouts, still maintains a strong industrial base and continues to survive without falling under India's thumb. In fact, it goes toe-to-toe against India on many occasions. Just look at the recent Operation Tandoor, where a handful of Indian jets were shot down in a single day. And the GDP numbers must be taken into context. Firstly, inequality is far higher in India than any of these other countries. So even with a smaller GDP per capita, Pakistan actually has a higher percentage of people with higher wealth than India. And second, there's lots of evidence that points to Modi fudging the GDP calculations as soon as he entered office by changing base year calculations and adding certain items such as cow and goat dung. But in Indian media, you'd think the story is the opposite. News anchors like Palki Sharma scream about Indian global leadership while avoiding uncomfortable questions about poverty, unemployment, or falling education standards. She whips up the angry WhatsApp netizens into a frenzy until they foam at the mouth with curry and boast and brag online about how India is a superpower. Meanwhile, its neighbors just quietly get on with business. Let's not sugarcoat it. India is failing to translate its scale into progress. It's got the people, the land, the resources, but it's weighed down by corruption, caste divisions, hyper-nationalism, and bad governance. It tries to play the role of big brother in South Asia, but economically, it behaves more like an insecure cousin trying to prove it's better at the family dinner table. Now imagine if India actually treated its neighbors with respect, if it worked with them on trade, infrastructure, and energy, instead of flexing military muscle or playing geopolitical chess. South Asia could look a lot more like ASEAN, where smaller nations coordinate instead of compete. But right now, India's ego gets in the way, as usual. To summarize, India might have the loudest voice in the room, but that doesn't make it the smartest or the most successful. Its neighbors are smaller, yes, but many of them are growing smarter, faster, and with far less arrogance. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't forget to hit subscribe. More truth, less hype, right here.